Hi, and welcome to episode 5 of Content Marketing today we're going to be going over content marketing and analytics. This is a little bit different since analytics and data kind of fuels everything. All right, every decision that you make, every piece of content that you create should all be because of data. Okay, so as a result, I believe content marketing is the only content marketing left. And so analytics and data has to be really important and has to be looked at on a daily basis to be an effective content marketer. So a lot of Moneyball stuff is going to be thrown in here, partly because I just like the movie and I love that it's a thing that uses analytics and data to make decisions where it wasn't previously done. And although we do this in content marketing, we do this in SEO, we do this in digital marketing all the time, I don't think we do it to an extent that we need to. It needs to be the fuel. It needs to be the fuel behind every single decision that you make. And a lot of things I talk about here are things that I've done in the past, a lot of mistakes that I've made. But let's go right into this. So, generally speaking, the problem with your average marketer when they look at analytics is they're just looking at some standardized numbers and they're looking at those across the board. So what's my traffic like? What's my bounce rate like for this page? And they use those same metrics to measure success across the entire board, across the entire website. So why are they doing that? I mean, it doesn't make sense. You have to understand individual goals of individual pages. Okay, let's take like a blog. We know that the focus of a blog isn't necessarily for them to go everywhere on the site after they've read it. We know as content marketers here that what we want to do is create an engaging piece of content that they read and engage with. Yeah, it'd be great if they went somewhere else, but a lot of people are just going to read a piece of content and they're going to bounce off. So that registers as a bounce rate, as a bounce off in your analytics. And if you're measuring bounce rate, you'd be like, oh, that's not a successful post. But what if they spent 10 minutes reading it? What if they spent the entire time to watch your video, to read through it, to, maybe even perform an action on it? That doesn't make sense. You have to create goals for each page. So on a blog, set up a goal so that after 2 minutes, 3 minutes, something fires, a goal fires that says, hey, an event happened and this was a successful piece of content. And you do this for each part of your page. The goal of a home page should get to be to filter them to the piece of information they want. Ideally, you want them to land somewhere else, but if they land on your home page, you want them to be able to filter their way through there. So what's your navigation of your site look like? How's the structure? How's the user experience? How are people clicking through and, are they finding the piece of content they want as fast as possible? Using the user flow and Google Analytics and a lot of other tools as well, we'll be able to show you what that user flow is like on your website. And then you can use that to determine, should I change anything on it? And that can be tough because you might like the way your website looks, you might like the navigation structure. It doesn't matter. You have to do how people are interacting with your page is more important than how you think it should look. So, listen to them. And if you're not doing that, you're not even trying to solve a problem. You don't even know what the problem is. So it's just an important thing to realize. And then going a little bit more into content, what do they care about? A core principle, a core value, however you want to put it, of content marketing is understanding the audience. More specifically understanding your audience. What do they care about? What do they want to engage with? Okay. And it's tough, a content writer, it's tough for them to hear this sometimes because they always want to create new, exciting content. Revisiting old content isn't quite as exciting, especially if those creative juices flowing and they just want to create new stuff all the time. Look at data first to see how are people responding to that. Look at your analytics. What pieces of content are they interested in? Okay. How are they interacting with it? Where are they going after they've been on one page? They go to another piece of content. What's the link between those two? Should you be linking between those two? Take your personal preference out of this. Take your creativity a little bit out of it when you're looking at data to see how are they engaging with my content and what pieces of content are really interesting to them. What pieces of content are they reading longer than on other pieces of content? So with that information, what's an amazing thing about data is it can really tell you exactly what you need to know. And this can help you create new content for sure, but can also help you understand where your real winners are on your site. So, the most popular blog post or piece of content on Moz's site is still the beginner's guide to SEO. And I'm sure with the amount of creativity that they have over there, they always want to, and they have the ability to always create new content, but they never lose focus of how important this piece of content is to them. You know, the data shows this is the most landed on piece of content that they have. And how do they respond to that? They're constantly bringing in updates. They're constantly promoting it. They treat it like a new piece of content every single week. You know, there's always some kind of promotion around it. People are always commenting on it. They're always commenting back. They're always improving it. So take a look at your site. Take a look to see which piece of content people really, really like. And instead of just thinking, I got to create new content, I have a great new idea, you know, filter that creativity to your most popular piece of content. Either create a similar piece of content to it, something that enhances the one you already have. You know, can you create a visual around it? Can you create a video around that? Because you know that topic really resonates with people. Or just update it. You know, and once you update it, go through your entire, you know, promotional process just like you did the first time around. Treat it like a new piece of content. And only if you really look at analytics and dive beyond the normal stats of traffic and bounce rate, but really take a look at the engagement, you know, where do they go after they've been on that site, that's when you can really see what's valuable, and, you know, focus on that content. Now, don't ever lose sight of your creativity, all right? Sometimes when you're really getting into the data, when you're really getting into the analytics, you somehow get a little bit lost, and you always have to remember the 70-20-10 rule that Coca-Cola uses, and certainly a lot of other marketers use this as well. 70% of their content is always designed around what they know their audiences are going to like. All right, and that's through years and years of data they've gathered, that they know the types of content that's going to resonate with their audiences, and that's what they continuously do. But they have 10% of their content is still dedicated to trying something new. They use data, they use analytics to fuel kind of what that might be, but at the same time, this is a chance to try something new, to tap into a new market. So they're never losing their creativity. It's just not where the majority of their resources are going to. So 10% is just off the wall, strange content. You're like, I think I have an idea, this might work, but this is what's important, and this is where data and analytics is so important. When you launch that, watch to see if it's being engaged with. Just like analytics is important to see where your winners are and where you might be able to create additional pieces of content around that, you also have to use it to find out where your losers are. And if you use this, you know, this 10% rule here, a lot of that 10% is going to fail because you're trying something brand new. You're not, you don't know for sure if it's going to resonate with your audiences. If it does, it's normally a huge winner, but watch it carefully and don't get too attached to an idea because, you know, if you're creating content for your brand, you know, you have to do what's best for the audience and what they like. And if they don't, you got to let go of that. So use analytics to determine what's not working as well and cut it off. And it's hard sometimes for somebody who's creative, such as myself, who might have a great idea like this is going to be awesome. It doesn't matter if nobody's interested in it. And it certainly doesn't matter if your audience isn't interested in it. So just keep that in mind. Most importantly, what analytics is able to do, similar to the Oakland Athletics, is it enables you to compete with bigger brands, with companies that have a much bigger budget. Budget helps. Budget gives you access to video resources you might not have. Certainly a lot more personnel to throw ideas off of. The amount of content you can create, certainly it's a disadvantage. But if you do it right, if you use your analytics, you really pay attention to every single metric that's important to you and important to your audience, you have a chance to compete because you'll probably be creating less content, but you can create the content that you know is going to work. And you know it's going to work because you've seen through analytics that people stay on that content longer, or that they fill out forms more often, or that they engage with you, or they're a returning visitor. And if you just use that and you go with the numbers as opposed to like your instinct or your gut, you have a chance to have an advantage over those companies that are just like throwing money at their marketing and not really looking at what they're doing. Now, ideally, you want to have that budget along with that mentality, but sometimes those two are kind of hard to go together. But know that if you're a startup, if you're a smaller business, if you do this right, you have a chance to really compete in an industry where there are much bigger brands, much bigger players, but you can find your audience, you can find your niche, you can find what resonates with them exactly. You have a chance to compete. All right, so thank you for tuning in, and I will talk to you again next week.